pleasure and privilege to be able to talk to you about Russiagate and some other issues related to US foreign policy. Yeah. I know that in the United States you've been interviewed several times at Fox News, at Democracy Now, and certainly in other sites too. Well, I am Anders Romelsjo, Professor Emeritus in Public Health Science and editor of the blog Globalpolitics.se, and you have been the technical director of the large NSA, the National Security Agency, and you are also a member of Veterans Intelligence Professional Fraternity. Is that?
Yeah.
That's
correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. We try to stay sane here. Most of the people around us are going insane, so, you know.
Fine. Yes, NSA is a very large organization, 40,000 employees, big budget, over $10 billion. In one of the very few articles in Sweden with your name in 2013, it was said that you reported that NSA has collected about 20 billion of data transactions by US citizens.
That's 20 trillion. That was not
yes. Time has flied and it has increased.
Yes, it's much more than now. I mean, that was back after the first, basically around the first 5-6 years of the data collection they were doing.
Yes.
That's just on citizens, yeah.
Have NSA has developed X-key score, kind of Google for spies, I've read, is that?
Actually, there's two query programs. One is X-key score and the other is IC Reach. If you can Google IC Reach and space NSA on the web and read about it, it is a program for querying the database that NSA has for the Five Eyes and departments of the government of the United States. That's the query for them. For other countries in the world that are participating in the bulk acquisition of data, it's like 9 other countries, 8 or 9 of them. They use X-key score to interrogate and query that database. It is like a Google query. You know, you can put phrases, words, IP numbers, whatever you want in there, and it will search that for you.
I see. Sweden has an organization, similar kind of course, much smaller organization, FRA, Försvarets radioanstalt, which is said to collaborate with NSA and provide information from Russia to NSA. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, Sweden is one of 33 other countries that are participating. They're all documented in materials released by Edward Snowden. The second parties are, you know, the other Five Eyes, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. And then third parties are like 33 other countries, ranging from Japan all the way through Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands, Germany, Poland, you know. A whole series of them are all listed in the data released by Edward Snowden.
Yes, and he had to flee. In his case, to Russia, and yes, we read about him and written about him and see the fine movie about him and what he has done. Has NSA changed? It was criticized when he and Glenn Greenwald published about it. Has it changed its way of working, do you think, or is it still collecting such a lot of data?
Yeah, and you could tell that by the facilities they built. So they're now building a 2.5 or 2.8 million square foot facility on Fort Meade. They took out a 36-hole golf course to do it. And you can see that if you go to Google Earth, you know, and look down at Fort Meade, you could see the clearing that they've taken out to put this huge building in. Well, I mean, if you're collecting everything, which General Alexander, the former director of CIA, was his position, and everybody seems to have continued that. That's why they built the Utah facility, the 1 million square foot facility, storage facility. That was to house all the data they're collecting. Well, if you're going to collect everything, that's an ever increasing amount year after year. So you have to keep building ever increasing larger and larger storage facilities.
But how do they really use it for how can they use it for any purpose, all these data? They are going with for keywords or
or by targeting individuals that are doing something they don't like the Tea Party, the reporters, Jim Rosen, the Associated Press. Elliot Spitzer was trying to put the bankers in jail for defrauding people in the 2007-2008 financial crisis. You know, people like that who are trying to do things and obey the law, I might add, they target because they're doing something they don't like. They've also used it against whistleblowers, you know, and they also have used it internationally against princes in the Middle East countries. You know, they go out and look at pornography. That's leverage against them because that's a no-no in their country. So they use that kind of leverage, and it basically gives them the ability to have power over everybody because they need to know what everybody's doing, what they're saying, what they're fundamentally thinking is a reflection of what they say and who they associate with. Then that gives them power. So that gives them influence, you know, on everybody in parliaments anywhere in the world.
Do you think they work to some extent independently, or is, so to say, all their work, their choice of targets, person to address or to dislegitimate approved by the government?
Actually, they spy on the U.S. government too. So they do that internally in secret in the NSA. They have programs where they're actually looking at members of Congress, House and Senate, members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, members of the FISA court, federal judges around the country, also the Supreme Court. So they're looking basically at anybody, and also other agencies of the government. So they're looking basically at anybody who has any influence or power over them, and they do that in a separate, compartmented, you know, restricted area, highly restricted. So, and they've been doing that all along. You know, when they had the Church Committee investigating NSA, CIA, and FBI for doing the same things they're doing now, but on a much smaller scale, some of their main targets, the main one was Senator Church, because he was doing the investigation of them, and also the members of his committee. So they were spying on them at the time they were being investigated by them.
It's awful. Is that widely known in the United States by those?
No, it's not because the mainstream media doesn't carry this knowledge. They don't publicize it. They don't let the public know what's going on, or anybody that's saying this is never on the mainstream media being able to say it. I was on once or twice and I haven't been back since. You know.
So okay, that's so they'll spy on the president and his government, and
yes.
And
well,
they
even before he was a candidate, they were spying on him. Yeah.
So they have. It seems, as according to what you say, that they have an immense potential power.
Yes, for industrial espionage and so on. And the other problem is the contractors are running the database and the queries into the database and making sure all the communication, everything runs to and from that database. And in fact, they can go into that data themselves. So that offers up the opportunity for industrial espionage by any of the companies involved with NSA or CIA or FBI, because FBI and CIA have direct access to that data too, without oversight.
Okay, that's very important to know, and it's frightening, really. Let's.
Well, that's one of the reasons we had an attempt at a soft coup by the FBI and the DOJ and the CIA. Also, the State Department and the White House, right? Originally in the Obama White House. That was a soft coup they created with this Russiagate and other issues that they tried to raise to impeach President Trump, falsifying information and basically lying to the court to get indictments and warrants.
And that can be shown that they really lied.
Yep. I have an affidavit in the court in the criminal court prosecution of Roger Stone. I put that affidavit in saying that basically the Goose for Two data and the DNC hack data posted by WikiLeaks clearly demonstrated that they were not hacks, they were local downloads and transported physically before they got to WikiLeaks.
Oh, frightening, really. Should we go over and talk about Russiagate?
Sure, that's fine.
Yes, the proposition that Russia interfered in the election, in U.S. presidential election, or Russiagate, has been on the agenda now for almost 3 years, as far as I understand. In April, the special counselor Robert Mueller came with his report, and the 4 pages of that were published by the Attorney General William Barr in Sweden. He is Justitieminister. As I understood, Robert Mueller didn't convey any information or evidence that supported the view that Russia had intervened in U.S. election in his report. Then neither about so-called collusion between Russia and the Trump presidential campaign. Do you think that's correct?
Actually, Mueller starts out with the allegation that he makes the assumption that the Russians basically interfered in the election. He doesn't demonstrate any way that they did. No evidence whatsoever of that. So the only thing I know and have seen some evidence of about the Russians and trying to influence opinion in the U.S. was something like spending $100,000 on Facebook ads. And of that, 46,000, I think, was spent before the election and the rest of it after the election. So for $46,000 worth of Facebook ads, they're going to basically influence nobody in an election. So, I mean, especially when Hillary Clinton spent $2 billion and didn't get elected, 46,000 is nothing. And even if it was attempting to influence the election, it really couldn't. It was impossible. That was such a minuscule effort that was going nowhere. If there was any intent for them to influence it, they weren't trying with $46,000. I'll tell you that.
Yes, but one should then think that the whole issue was finished after his report. But I read the other day that Robert Mueller has said still that there are serious systematic attempts have been undertaken by Russia to influence the elections. He said that recently, didn't he?
He's basically lying. I mean, he's lying to keep it going for the Democrats. He wanted to keep that as an issue to the 2020 election. That's what he wants to do. He wants to keep the Trump administration so involved in this kind of fake news and lies about them so that they can't actually succeed at doing things. That's what the Democrats want. That's what they're doing. They try to reduce the success rate at which Trump has had with the economy and what he's doing with China, basically calling them on basically what they're doing is swindling our country and every other country in the world, by the way, not just us. So we're not alone in this. All your European countries being swindled by them too, and they're playing money games with their money to devalue it and keep their advantage and trade and everything. So it's not a matter. It's not just concerning us. It concerns everybody in the world, and Trump is addressing it. And Trump is addressing that, and no other president of the United States or leader anywhere else in the world has done that. And that's what he needs to do.
That's fine that he cares about it.
Yeah,
He must, of course.
Yep.
Must, of course. I heard that Attorney General William Barr is planning to start a new investigation about the origins of the so-called Russiagate Professor Stephen Cohen, the well-known, especially in Russia history, thinks that's a fine idea to go back to see how it started. So I wonder, is it really, or will it just increase, so to say, the potential interest for the whole issue?
I can't say everything about that, but I can say this. He's going to go back and investigate all the crimes committed to get that indictment and warrant and everything else associated with it. He's going to investigate everybody who was involved, what they did, and find out the crimes they've committed. And my point to him at that is very simple. Once you find those, and they're going to be found because we already know about some of them. So once you find them, you have to refer these people for indictment and take them into criminal court.
Then it seems as a very good idea to try to clean it up.
If you don't face the problem, you'll never fix it. That's the point. And if we don't fix it now, it's going to get worse. You know, it's the shadow government, the military, industrial, intelligence, banking, technology complex is only going to get stronger and just be so more. I mean, they can even lie to Congress outright and simply nothing happens to them. You know, like Alexander and Clapper and all of them going up there lying to Congress. Oh, we're not spying on U.S. citizens. Well, yes, you are. And we didn't do anything with this Steele dossier. No, yes, you did. So it's just a whole series of lies from these people, and nothing happens to them. Well, this should change with Barr, and I hope it does. And if he doesn't, then he's just bought in with the criminal mob that we have in Washington, D.C.
Bad. One important part of the Russiagate was the issue of providing information to WikiLeaks from the Democrats' National Committee under the presidential campaign here. And it was said that this was done by people working for the Russian government. As I understood, you have, from your technical expertise and knowledge, shown and written that this information could not have been hacked from outside.
Right.
Could you please tell a little bit more about it? Has that, so to say, been accepted now?
Most people don't want to accept it. That's what I put in a sworn affidavit in the federal court for the Roger Stone case. That's where I put it in as an affidavit. Well, it basically boils down to this. If you looked at the DNC emails that were posted by WikiLeaks, this is the WikiLeaks data. Mm-hmm. It was posted for the dates 23, 25, and 26 May of 2016. Mm-hmm. So if you look at it and just look at the last modified times on each of the files, all of them end in even seconds. Now, the point is that that's not a random occurrence. If it were a random occurrence, it's like 1 chance in 2 to the, we looked at over 500. So it's at least 1 chance in 2 to the 500th power, of actually happening randomly. Well, it's not random. I mean, it's a function of a program called the FAT, and FAT, file allocation table formatting. That's a property of the result of that process, meaning reading it to a thumb drive or a CD-ROM or some kind of storage device. So it meant that went to a storage device before WikiLeaks got it to post. That says it's not a hack.
I see. Has anybody presented other, so to say, important information which counters your information, which doesn't that makes your information invalid? Is there any?
Nope. Plus, I would add this, and this I've argued since August of 2016. The national security, NSA, has so many wiretaps inside the United States. With the Fairview program, the Stormbrew program, the Blarney program, there's over 100 tap points where they're taking everything off the fibers and storing it, as that's part of the bulk acquisition of data on U.S. citizens. They have hundreds and hundreds of trace route programs embedded around the world, not just in the United States, but around the world, so that if anybody is hacking anybody, all they have to do is get one packet, and they'll know where it came from and where it went to, ultimately in the world, because that's embedded in the TCP/IP format for packet formats. You know, if you do deep packet inspection, you can see it carries the first thing is either a 16 or 32-bit number, which is the identifying number for the packet series of an item. So in other words, every one with that first number gets pulled together. This is how you call it sessionizing. It also has in it which packet it is in the sequence. So it tells you how to order the packets once you pull them together. This is the process of sessionizing, we call that. And then that gives you the file you're looking at. And so NSA has those programs that trace them, and all they need is one packet for it, so they'll know where it came from. I mean, they could trace the attack coming in. They can trace it going back. So where did it go? NSA has said absolutely nothing about that because, I mean, the most they've said is they have moderate confidence that the Russians did it. Well, I'm telling you, if the Russians did it through a hack, NSA's got at least some packets of it. And so therefore, they're going to be able to trace it. And there should have no question at all where it came from and where it went all the way through Europe. They put these traceroute programs in there to defeat the Tor program, because the Tor program breaks packets up and sends them all different ways, you know. And so they in order to do that, if you're trace routing them by the millions or hundreds of millions or billions, which they're doing, then you can see how to reconstruct the series.
Okay, but did Mueller or a serious investigation about this issue would, of course, interview you?
No, no, he did not. He didn't even ask. He didn't even, nor did the intelligence committees in the House and the Senate, because they know it's very dangerous to interview me, because what I will do is address also the bulk acquisition of data against the U.S. citizens as a violation of their constitutional rights and any number of laws on the U.S. books. And they don't want to do that, so they need to maintain plausible deniability, which means I won't testify to them, otherwise they'll know, and they can't claim plausible deniability. See, this is a direct violation of their oath of office, all of them. They all take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, and they're not doing it. So, and they can claim they don't know about it because they never heard about it. I haven't testified to them, but if I testify, they can't claim plausible deniability, because I invented half the programs they're using to do this.
I see. Yeah, that's awful. And of course, they didn't interview Julian Assange either.
Or Craig Murray, Ambassador Craig Murray.
Yes, I've read what he has written. He's written very good accounts of this.
Or also, they did not investigate or question Kim.com, who also said that he had assisted Seth Rich in transferring data to WikiLeaks.
Okay, Seth Rich, yes, that was the young man who was found dead. And
yep.
I think perhaps you know, but it's not public who really transmitted information to WikiLeaks.
Yeah, well, that's there's several people who have said it's been Seth Rich. In fact, there was an illicit recording of Cy Hirsch. I don't know if it's true or not, but the president should take action on his what it was recorded. He said that the FBI has a report on the computer, on the Seth Rich investigation into the Seth Rich computer. The reason they did it is because the local police in D.C. went to look at the computer and they couldn't get into it, and they had a problem doing it. So they turned it over to the FBI. So the FBI looked at it, and he said sources told Cy Hirsch that that's what the recording says, which the president should follow up. He can order this, by the way. He said that the FBI wrote a report about it that said Seth Rich's computer showed contacts with WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, asking for money for and giving samples of the data from the DNC, and then asking for money for the rest of it. And so, I mean, that's what is supposedly in that FBI report. Well, this is what I've been telling basically the president and his lawyers. And also I told Director Pompeo of CIA when he was director of CIA at the time. I went in for an interview because the president asked him to contact me and talk to me about facts for Russiagate. I mean, there's a couple of aspects there. I'll get into them. But when I was in there, that's what I told him. I said, you know, your agency and the agencies of the intelligence community of the United States are lying to you and the president. They're just lying to you. They're not telling you the truth. Mm-hmm. So, you know, he said he had a hard time believing. I said, you don't have to believe me. I said, there's an Inspector General, Department of Defense Inspector General report on all the lying and corruption and fraud and waste involved in this from NSA alone. You can read that report. It's DOD IG report 05-Intel-03. And you go read it. It's on the record, you know. So he said he was going to do that, but I don't think he did. Okay, so I just think he passed it off. He asked me if I would talk to the FBI and the CIA or the NSA, and I said, sure, but I won't assist them in the violations of the constitutional rights of U.S. citizens. He said, well, nobody wants to do that. Well, they openly say that, but in secret, they're all doing it, okay?
I see, yes. I don't think Pompeo should be seen as a defender of the constitutional rights, or less of international rights.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our Constitution embodies the human rights around for everybody in the world. That's nothing, that they're inalienable rights given us by the Almighty, right? Whoever you want to define that as.
Yes. How is the issue now? Is there any, so to say, opinion among people, any grassroots opinion questioning the Mueller report, or are people just tired of hearing about it, or is anything happened or happening? Well, it may happen something if William Barr starts his new investigation, of course.
Yeah, that's and I will help them any way I can. Let me put it that way. Okay. so yes. Well, you know, I fully expect these people to be put on the spot and explain to the judge what they did and why. That's what I expect. And Mueller should be one of them. Mueller and Comey, both of them, are a part of this and have been a part of the Stellar Wind, the domestic spying program, the bulk acquisition of data on U.S. citizens and everybody else in the world. They've been known about this and participated in it and used it against U.S. citizens since 2001.
Yes, 2001. A few years ago, a movie came out, The Good American, yep. Which reported that you, during the years, had developed a simple data program, the Thin Thread, which may have stopped the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. I read in one of the very few articles in Swedish newspaper, they mentioned that film. Is that correct? You were stopped?
Yes, that's right. In fact, it would have. It was a targeted, focused approach using deductive, inductive, and abductive logic. You know, so proximity in a social network within two hops. No. And the one thing we had in the restriction of the second hop was you can't go through a company or a department of a government, because then you pull in huge numbers of people who aren't related to anything. Like, for example, and I use the example of Google. If I go to Google, or if a terrorist goes to Google, then the second hop from Google is to like 1.5 billion people every day. And so therefore, everybody in the planet is available at two degrees. So you have to have the restriction of not using companies or departments of government. You can't go through them for the second hop. And when you do that, you get the real social networks that exist, okay? And so that gives you a rich environment then for analysis, saying people deduct from a deductive approach that is that restricts it to that 2 degree relevant data, no companies or government. Then you have a rich environment to analyze terrorists. So if you have like using latent semantic indexing, looking for common words and phrases and so on, if you automatically analyze it, then you can have a high chance of getting something associated with the terrorist activity and actually making a productive thing. Now, if you produce that to the analysts, it's a very limited amount of information and they can get through it. So now they have a chance to succeed at stopping things. And the same is true with the inductive. The inductive meaning things like if you are using a satellite phone in the mountains of Pakistan on the Afghani border, or, you know, if you're using it in the jungles of Peru where they do a lot of drug, you know, smuggling and development, things like that, or you're visiting sites that advocate pedophilia or you know, bomb making or violence against the West or jihad, things like that. That's the inductive approach, where you don't have a connection between two parties, but somebody looking or using certain properties of communications, or looking at certain sites that might make them in the process of being radicalized, for example. You can see people doing that. So those are the kinds of things that we get, all of them, not just 9/11, everything, even before 9/11, after 9/11. That's the whole objective I was after in the 1990s, to set that up, that program that would actually make that work. Because even back then, analysts in NSA were buried by so much data, they couldn't get through it, so they couldn't see the threat coming. And now, after 9/11, they've spent tens of billions of dollars to, you know, spread around all these mass collection devices around the world on the fiber optic network, and they're taking in, you know, 3 to 4 orders of magnitude more data every day than they did back then. So now they're orders of magnitude even more buried. And the Snowden material showed that to be true. Internally, he had articles written by analysts in NSA, like 10 or 12 articles, and MI5 and GCHQ, that were saying we are overburdened with overload. You know, we can't see the threat coming. They're even saying that internally, but their management's not listening. And the main reason is pretty much the reason they got rid of thin thread, which was a focused, disciplined approach that we did from beginning to end and operational in 3 different sites, 24 hours a day. We spent $3.2 million from scratch to do it. Now, they wanted $3.8 billion, 1,000 times that, to develop the Trailblazer program, and they had nothing to start with. They were doing their own design. They were using commercial people and companies to do it. Well, those companies are not in the intelligence business. They don't know how to produce intelligence, and they failed miserably by 2005. But that's after a few $1 billion wasted, and then they doubled down and used it as a funding program for more waste in other programs. So they replaced it, Trailblazer, with the I can't remember the name. It's another T program name, but I'll think of it. There's something later. I just can't remember it now. There's just too many program names, you know. But what they do is, the trick is they change the name, keep the program going, and use that new name as a way of getting more money out of Congress that doesn't know diddly about what they're doing, because they don't tell them. That's why there's totally ineffective oversight in the U.S. government of anything the intelligence agencies are doing. In fact, if you look around the world, no government in the world has any control of their own intelligence agencies. I even testified to the Bundestag about the BND and the relationships there and things of that nature. And they just found in their investigation that the BND, you know, had been participating with NSA and giving them bulk data on German citizens. Well, I mean, you know, that's why, and they didn't know that. The only people who knew it were very few people in the hierarchy of the government, including the chancellor. The rest of them didn't know.
I mean, that also is problematic regarding the issue about democracy.
Yeah,
I mean, absolutely. It seems as instead of using trying to collect data in an intelligent way, focusing on certain keywords, etc., they are now drowning in data to much higher costs. So that's what you are saying, I think.
And it makes them dysfunctional. They can't succeed at the job. The only thing they can do is, after the attack, they find out who did it. Then they go in and pull all the data on them. Now they know who they're all associated with after the fact. But the people have died already. You know, it's too late. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's just, and, you know, internally they've been documenting this. The analysts have been documenting this inside the intelligence agencies. You know, not just here in the United States, but also in the UK.
I see. One question is, of course, from a Swedish perspective, what to do in Sweden. It seems for me and others important just to convey information about this, which we try to do on blogs, in articles, in at social media, but it's very difficult to have anything published in the mainstream media, also in Sweden. We have tried several times, but mainstream media have their rather limited scope, which is rather well connected to the interests of the elite in the society, as it seems to be the case in the United States. That's sad to say.
It is, because what's happened is, I think Casey, the former director of CIA.
Yes, William Casey.
He put it fairly clearly, I think. This was under President Reagan, back in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. He said we have had for a number of decades, an effort to infiltrate the media. And you'll know that we've succeeded when 70% of what is believed is false. And that's exactly what's happened. Everything in our mainstream media is that way. And it's even greater than 70%,
Yes, there has been reports about it also from Germany. German journalist Udd, for instance. CIA, was it Phil H.E. or what his name was in the 70s, shown that the CIA had hired or paid a lot of journalists and trade union leaders and politicians to distribute their ideas, their false ideas. What to do about it? Is it just that we all try to spread the information as much as possible, or is it possible? One hopes that there would be a grassroots movement for preserving and increasing democracy.
Yeah, I think we're witnessing the disintegration of democracy around the world because of this. That's really what's happening. And I think the first thing that we need to do is make sure that people, as best we can, are aware of it. That's why the mainstream media isn't doing anything about publishing it. They don't want people to know. And it's clear that the agencies of the governments don't want people to know what's going on, because this kind of bulk acquisition is power over everyone, and they like the idea of power. The three words that describe what goes on in Washington, D.C., for example, are power, control, and money. Those three words basically have controlled civilizations all the way back to the Egyptians, right? And they basically simply don't want anybody talking about it, and don't let anybody know. That way they can manipulate the people, keep them uninformed. They can then tell them, we'll take care of you, just leave it all to us, and here, do this, think this. That's basically what's going on. And so the first objective is to make sure that people know about it so they can be aware of it. Mm-hmm. And then, in my case over here, I'm going to try to help them prosecute people for doing it. And that's the first step to stopping it. You have to, and in fact, my objective over here, and I've already broadcasted to the media over here. The first thing we do is easy, and it'd be easy to do technically, is to purge the NSA database of all the irrelevant data. It's really simple. For example, right off the bat, you can eliminate U.S. citizens without warrants. You can have anything with a 1 starting on is U.S. or Canada, in the phone network, and they got the IP blocks for IPv4, IPv6 blocks of numbers. We know which ones are in zone in the North American zone of the world. That's 5 different zones. There are 9 in the phone network, but 5 zones in the internet area. But again, we know the blocks there. All you have to do is go through those blocks, and if you have a number, you know who it is, and therefore, do you have a warrant? Yes or no? No. Okay, delete it. So you could purge the whole data set, and then you could use the same argument of the focused attack approach using deductive, inductive, and abductive logic to look at all the rest of the data in the world and eliminate all of it that's not relevant.
Absolutely, and we in Sweden should actually try to get the information about how our organization, Försvarets radioanstalt, how it works. We know that it, as you said in the beginning of our talk, is collaborating with the NSA. So, this is actually an issue isn't it, for preserving, strengthening democracy all around the world, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely true, yeah.
Yeah, one just lives once, and if one can try to contribute with this, the best thing or one can do, really. And well, in Sweden, we are organizing now a manifestation in support of Julian Assange. I mean, almost every Saturday, and trying to collect names in support for his situation and so on. I mean, we are a lot of people working with roughly the same goals here in a known or unknown network, I think, like ants working in the same place.
We also have support conferences over here on the web. We do that every Friday here. Joe Loria, the editor of Consortium News, basically manages, I think, the 4 hours or three hours of support for Julian from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. In Eastern Standard Time. But I would also point out to everybody that's listening, or that you share this with, where in the world have you gotten truth consistently? Because the only place you can find that is from Julian Assange. He's the only one who has consistently told the truth and given the evidence, basic truth, to everybody in the world to look at on all kinds of crimes all over the world by all kinds of governments. You know, not just the U.S. but others too. So it's not. That's where you get truth. Now, if you want to operate on lies, then don't pay attention to Julian. Right? Look at the mainstream media.
Yes, but man, that's why it's so important to support him. I mean, it's a support for freedom of information, freedom of speech, etc.
And the truth, the truth.
And the truth. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Bill, for this most interesting and informative talk and conversation. I will try my best to distribute it here in Sweden on various social media among friends and other people working to increase true information about it.
Good.
So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to be able to come back to you, because
sure thing, and thank you for making sure that the truth gets out.
We'll try to collaborate for this, for the future. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.